Okay, good afternoon. You have 20 minutes to complete this bell ringer and submit it in Canvas where it says Friday, October 19, bell ringer. Go ahead and get started. Pause the video if you need to, and then you'll be moving on to the directions. Okay, so today's lesson we are actually going to be using the graphing calculators, and I've been very, very specific about what you need to do and how you need to put this in the calculator. So if you need to pause the video, go ahead and pause it and go grab your graphing calculator because you're going to need it. Okay, so in order to be able to write equations from data, a set of data, a set of points, basically, right? We first need to figure out what the independent and dependent variables are, okay? You remember us talking before about how the independent, when you look on a graph, is always the x, and the dependent is always the y. Well, if all you're given is a situation and some data points, you need to figure out which is which so you can put them in the calculator correctly. So step one, figure out which is your independent and which is your dependent variables. Ask yourself the same question we've been asking since Monday. Is the first thing dependent on the second, or is the second dependent on the first? Okay, so look at the actual variables. All right, step two, we are going to put the data in the calculator. Okay, so turn your calculator on. You're going to go to the button that is marked STAT, S-T-A-T, and you're going to hit the STAT button. It's going to come up with three things that are at the top of the screen when you hit STAT. And those three things are Edit, Calc, and Tests. You are going to want to be on the Edit, make sure it's blacklighted. And if you're in the Edit button, then go ahead and just press Enter. Okay? You're going to come up with a set of columns, right? Probably named L1, L2, L3, L4, L5. It'll keep going, but they're all named columns, okay? Your X is always going to go in L1, and your Y is always going to go in L2. And you're just going to type the number, one at a time, type the numbers in and hit Enter. Now, here's the very specific thing on this, okay? You have to put them in the order that you have them, okay? Don't put them in numerical order from like least to greatest. That's going to mess up your data. You put them in the order that you have them, and we'll talk about it as far as when we get to the example, okay? But you're just going to keep hitting Enter until all of your X's are in L1, and then you're going to use the right arrow to go over and put all of your Y values in L2, okay? So you have your independent, your X in L1, and your dependent Y in L2. Okay. After you do that, after you've put the data in, you're going to get the calculator. You remember the Friday before your break, how we graphed that data that we got from, was it the Cheerios? No, it wasn't the Cheerios. It was one of the other pieces of data that we went ahead and graphed, right? And then we drew a line through the data points. Well, now we're going to make the calculator do it for us, okay? Now you need to follow these steps exactly. Go back to the STAT button. Now, it's not going to work now because you don't have any points in there yet. But you go back to the STAT button. You right arrow over to Calc. Okay, you go down to number 4, which is Lin Reg. Okay, and then you hit Enter. Okay, it's going to ask you, or basically it's going to have like parentheses. Okay, so you need to tell it where your data is. You're going to do a linear regression, which is, making the equation for the line, but you have to tell the calculator where your data is, okay? If you look, the little blue button, second button, okay, look at all the little things in blue on your calculator. Every time you want to get to one of those, you use the little second button because it's in blue and it gets you all of those. So if you look at pressing the second button and then the number 1, what's printed in blue right above the number 1, L1. So you're telling the calculator that your first data point, your X's, are in L1, okay? The comma is right above the 7, so make sure you put the comma between them. It's very important. Keep in mind, when we write points, we write X comma Y, right? The calculator needs to know that too. So you're basically telling it all your X's, comma, and then you're going to hit second, the blue button again, and then 2, because L2 is printed right above 2. So this is going to give you L1. This is going to give you L2, okay? And that's you're telling your calculator basically where you put your data. And then you're going to close the parentheses, close them, and then you're going to hit enter. And it's going to give you an A and a B value. Now, it's very, very specific as far as how it's written, okay? If you looked at when you went over to the stat calc and then down to number 4, when it said linreg, which is a linear, like you're doing a straight line, and regression just means taking the points and making a line to fit them, it says AX plus B, right? Well, AX plus B, that's like MX plus B, right? It's basically the slope-intercept form. Okay, so that means that when it gives you that data, A is going to be your, I'm going to start typing this, slope, okay? A is going to be your slope, and B is going to equal your y-intercept. And you're going to be rounding because you're probably going to have decimals. It's not a big deal, okay? But that's the information it's going to give you. It's going to give you the slope and the y-intercept to write an equation to match your data points. Now, you are still going to have to grab graph paper, right, and actually graph the points, but you are at least going to be able to write an equation to go with those points. Okay? So, let's try one. Have your calculator ready, and this is what I'm talking about as far as putting them in order. When we go to the calculator and we put in stat and then we're in edit, we're going to put in L1, because that's going to be your independent is your X, right? The height of a sunflower in inches for 51 days. So does the height depend on the day or the day depend on the height? I hope you said that the height is dependent on the day. Okay, so we're going to put 1, 5, 12, 20, 28, 35, 45, 51 in the L1 column. Remember, you go to stat and then edit. So you just hit 1, enter, 5, enter, 12, enter, 20, enter, 28, keep going. I'm going to type them in with you, 35, 45, and 51. And then what did I say to do next? Use the right arrow up in the right-hand side of your calculator. Use the right arrow to go over to the next column, L2, where we're putting our Y. And you're going to type those numbers in, 0.5, 1, 3, 5, 8, and keep going. I'm typing them in with you. Okay, so if you have to, go back and rewind and do the video again. It's fine, but go back to the instructions again. You're going to need to go to Stat, right arrow over to Calc, go down to number 4, right, and then hit Enter, and then tell the calculator where your data is. So Stat, right arrow to Calc, down to number 4, hit Enter. Okay, the first thing that goes in is your X, right? We're doing this in, point order, X and Y's. Okay, so your X is in L1, your Y, so remember that's second 1, comma, and then your Y is second L2, right, 2, L2, and then close the parentheses and hit Enter. And it's going to give you an A and a B. This should be what you got, rounded. 0.2969, it was like 0.296877, and I kept going. And then B, notice, is negative 0.373108, and it keeps going. So I just ran ahead and rounded it to 4 decimals. We're going to write an equation. We're just literally going to put in A for the slope and B for the y-intercept, and that's what it should look like. Okay, now what does this mean with the problem? Because remember, we're all about being able to talk about it in the real world. What does it mean? Okay, well, remember that we've talked about what is a y-intercept. Okay, a y-intercept is where x is 0. Well, x represents your days. So this would be the height at day 0. Right? That's what the y-intercept is, height at day 0. This in a different color. Height at day 0. That's what that means. Okay, well, remember that slope is rise over run. That's y, which is your height, over x, which is day. So height over day. So how would we, what would we, what would be the easiest way to say that as height over day? It's, I hope you said how much it grows every day, because that's what it's going to be. So how much it grows every day. And that is literally the definition for slope and y-intercept in this equation. Okay, so how much it grows every day is your slope, and that's going to be 0.2969. And do we have any kind of a, no, we don't have any kind of a unit. Oh, it's inches. Okay, so it's 0.2969 inches per day. Right, that's your slope. And it starts out at negative 0.3731 inches. Now, I know for those of you that are in ag, that doesn't make any sense because you can't be a negative inches high. It's basically what ends up happening a lot of the time in y-intercepts in the real world, is that they don't mean much because it's not possible for it to happen. But I still want you to tell me what that means. That it's the height at day 0 is negative 0.3731 inches. Okay? So again, go back if you have to and watch the video again. Make sure you're plugging the stuff into the calculator, because I expect you to do that. Put it in there and get the data. And then do the same thing that we've been doing all week. Give me the domain, give me the range. Let's go through this one to make sure you have it. The domain is your x, correct? So if that's your x value, then, well, let's see. Your x's are your days. So this is, since it's for 51 days, my domain, this is what I was talking about the square brackets before, is from 0 to 51. Okay, well, my range is my y. So we need to look at the height, because that's what the y is. All right, that's the dependent. Well, my height, we can still say that the height goes from 0 all the way up to 15 inches. So 0 to 15 inches. Sometimes we can say it's from the y-intercept because that's really where it starts, if it actually meant something. But since it is impossible to be a negative height, we're just going to say it's from 0 to 15 inches. And that's your domain and range in context for the problem. Okay, you have one data set in one assignment on Canvas. And I'm trying to remember what it is, but it's a data set, and I think it has to do with, yes, it's a water park and the number of people at the park and versus the temperature. And y'all should know that if the temperature goes up, you're going to have more people at the park. So you're going to put that data in your calculator. You're going to graph the data on a piece of graph paper. So grab some of my graph paper. And if you want to put all the rest of this on the graph paper, that's fine. You can tell me what the slope and the y-intercept and the domain and range are on your paper, on your graph paper. And then you can take a picture of it and upload it into Canvas. Okay, and then, so you got that one. And then there is a homework assignment also in Canvas for you to do. That'll be due Monday, obviously. This one, the one that's in Canvas now, is due before the end of class. Okay. Side note, you're going to want to know this. To reset your calculator, okay, so that you can put another set of data in there and you don't have to go back and delete all that junk. Okay, so the steps to do are second, that's that blue button again, plus, which is your memory key. It basically resets your memory. And then you press 7, 1, and 2. And it will reset everything on your calculator so you don't have anything stored in there. Okay, anytime you need to put in a new data set, especially being what we're doing now with is a lot of graphing, you're going to want to do second plus 7, 1, 2 pretty much as you walk in every day and grab your calculator. Okay, so again, your assignment is in Canvas. It is called Independent Practice, and it's got today's date on it. And then you have a worksheet that the sub and Miss Bryant have to give you for homework, and that is due by Monday. So have an awesome weekend. And Ryan, shout out to you. Yes, we still have practice today. That's taken care of. So have an awesome weekend, and I will see y'all Monday.